All right, today we are back with another video, and we're going to be taking a close look at one of, I think, the most fascinating things in the Civil War, and that is Sherman's March to the Sea. And so let's go ahead and jump right in. The very first thing we're going to see is that Ulysses S. Grant, the general that now the commander of all the Union forces, he really believes that the strength of the Confederacy comes not from their soldiers, right? Because their soldiers are outnumbered like 2 or 3 to 1, right? So their strength doesn't come from their fighting men. Their strength comes from the home front. It comes from the fact that their economy hasn't completely collapsed, right? That life on the home front maybe hasn't changed that dramatically. Prices have risen, food may be a little bit more scarce, but soldiers on the war front, they're still getting letters daily from wives and parents and loved ones back home saying, continue to keep up the fight. We support you. And so high morale in the South and an economy that hasn't just completely yet collapsed are really kind of aiding the South. And so what we're going to see is that Grant really believes that if he can destroy those things, right, if he can bring the war to people on the home front, that it will destroy the morale and that the Southern Army will then collapse. So he's going to task his right hand man, and that is William Tecumseh Sherman, where General Lee had Stonewall Jackson as his kind of bulldog, the one that he turned loose when he had to get something done. For Grant, that's Sherman. Sherman is a general of the first order. I mean, he's the get it done guy. So he is ordered to make the South howl, right? To just bring the pain. And in his word, he's going to introduce the South to the hard hand of war. They're going to recognize what it's like to live in a state of war that goes well beyond just the war front, just the battlefield, right? So what he does is he's going to begin a march towards the city of Atlanta in September of 64. And Atlanta is a really important city because for the South, it's one of their few really large urban areas. It is where they have hubs for transportation. Now, remember, the North still has most of the railroad lines, but the South, their lines, they almost always go through Atlanta. So it's a very important city there. It's also important because it's a hub of industry. And again, the South doesn't have a whole lot of industry. So when the city falls, so does all of that as well. And Sherman's going to destroy all of the factories he comes across. He's going to destroy all the railroad tracks. He's going to burn the homes and barns of anybody who resists him. This is a pretty big deal. I mean, if Atlanta falls and its factories burn, the South already is at an incredible deficit for transportation and communications and industrial output. And now it just got much harder because the city of Atlanta has fallen and been burned, right? His troops are going to march all throughout the South, right, towards Atlanta, and then he's going to go on towards the sea. He's got his eyes set on Savannah, Georgia. So he's just making this huge trek across the South, right, the very heart of the South. And as they go, they are taking what they need, right? The Union Army is pillaging for food. They're taking food stores from local farms and fields, that sort of thing. They're slaughtering cattle and chicken and hogs in order to feed themselves. And so Sherman is both hated and deeply, deeply feared in the South. Anytime there's any resistance, he rolls over it like it's not even there. And so he is wreaking absolute havoc in the South. And because he's being so effective, kind of the legend of who he is kind of grows, and it increases the fear of him. So that when he arrives in many areas, they are so afraid of him that they have abandoned the cities in front of him, right? They've just up and left. They've given it. Sherman's on the way. We're not getting in the way of that. This guy, the reputation that he had was such that they began to destroy their own infrastructure because they knew he was going to do it. They destroyed their own railroad tracks. They blew up their own bridges. They set fire to a lot of the storehouses and barns and things like that were in his path because they knew that he was going to take whatever was in it, and he knew that he was going to do it again himself. And so in doing that, they're trying to slow his advance. Nothing slows Sherman. This is a man on a mission. They fled before him. They set fire to everything in sight, and so it's effective for a lot of different reasons. What we're going to see is that when he finally does roll into the city of Savannah, it too is abandoned. This is a major port city, and they just left it for the Union to take. So we're now making serious inroads into important port cities, Savannah being one of them. The city was not only abandoned, but when Sherman finds the city, there are 25,000 bales of unprocessed cotton. So that's ready to be shipped out. He actually sent that up north and sent a card to President Lincoln with this as a birthday gift. The city of Savannah and its 25,000 bales of cotton for you, Mr. President. Happy Merry Christmas, right? And so once he finishes that, then he begins a northward march, all right, to link back up with the rest of the Union Army and to try to finish the war once and for all. So he's going to head north through South Carolina. Again, these places are the very heart of the South, and everybody is kind of fleeing in front of him. What he does is a perfect example of total war because, again, it's not just on the battlefield, it is with the morale, it's with the supporters at home. He's going to attack the economy. He's going to attack the supply lines. He's going to attack communications and industry and transportation. All of the things, the infrastructure that allow you to effectively fight a war, he's going after all of it, and he's doing it right in the very heart of the South. So they can't even defend the places where they have the most support. I would imagine that those letters written home had changed dramatically. Where once they were very supportive, we know you're fighting for the cause, we know that you're trying to defend our way of life, and we support you. I imagine they took a much darker tone. Sherman is coming. Sherman, the reports are that he's close by. What would that have to do with soldiers fighting on the home front when they know that their homes are largely undefended? Their wives and children are in the path of this absolute monster. At least that's the way they saw him, right? And so there started to be a heightened level of soldiers that just ran off. They went AWOL, right? They went back home to try to defend or take care of their families in the best way that they could. And so all of this is that example of total war, and Sherman was the best at it. So anyway, I find that really very fascinating. I love Sherman's march. It's such an interesting thing, and I believe it does hasten the end of the war. I think the war by that point was probably well in hand. The outcome was probably inevitable. It hadn't been up until a certain point, but now I think it probably was inevitable. But this certainly hastened it. So thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe. Leave me any comments if there's anything that I forgot. I would love to hear from you. Thanks.